We are Rogue Media Sports.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
And it is another Doomsday Podcast. Ed Werder joining myself, Matt Mosley, and we are reacting. Boy, we have not done this in quite a while, and this thing was a laugher. I mean, at the very end, the Rams were able to go down there and score one last touchdown, make it 44-21. They just about got their guy killed in the end zone doing it. And, Ed, for one night, the Cowboys, I mean, we've been talking about this all season, that they cannot beat a team with a winning record. Well, they finally did it. And, most times you would say, well, too little, too late. But in this wild Cowboys season, there is there's actually time. And so this was good timing for the Cowboys.
And you would also say that the performance was so dominant that there'd be a temptation to make the claim that they dominated from the opening kickoff, but we know that that was not exactly true, given what happened during the coin toss at midfield. It does, though, seem like the only thing that the embattled Cowboys coach Jason Garrett will have to clean up this week is working with the captains to make a clear decision when winning the toss as to what they'd like to do, and maybe have them all practice saying defer, defer, defer. It was pretty interesting that after the game, DeMarcus Lawrence, who was standing next to Dak Prescott, took responsibility, saying, it was my fault because I wanted the defense to go on the field first because we wanted to set the tone. We were ready to play, and I said we want to play defense, and that created some confusion. And then Dak he said afterward, it wasn't our cleanest coin toss. And somebody said, what did you say? And he said, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And based on what had gone on, it really seemed like a continuation of a comedy of errors, that the Cowboys would somehow go out there. And I think you were pretty quick to look that up, or a lot, you gathered that information from Elias, that it had not happened where a team kicked off and then kicked off again to start the second half. It's like 1994, I think it was.
No, it was 2004.
Oh,
Buffalo
2004.
Jets, but
okay.
It wasn't a situation like this, where there was confusion about one of the captains and what he called. It was that there was a windy day, and whichever team it was, I think it was Buffalo, chose to kick off because they wanted the wind at their back and wanted to force their opponent to play into the wind in the second half. And so that's what the decision they made. It wasn't one of these things where somehow they didn't know how to articulate the choice they wanted to make. And of course, the instantaneous reaction is to, oh my God, Jason Garrett has now found a new way to fail and mismanage a game, a way that we had never imagined. Of all the things he's done, icing his own kicker, taking the ball out of Dak's hands against the Vikings and trying to run the football to win the game, and then handing it back to him on 4th and 5, not telling Tavon Austin what they wanted to do on that pivotal punt return, but letting everybody else on the return team know. Now the guy cannot even get the coin toss conducted properly without messing the whole thing up.
Yeah, it led to a lot of jokes, and it was I think maybe it was our friend Ducey who said, well, we found a fourth phase. They can't handle the coin flip.
So, but at least ultimately Jason Garrett was exonerated.
Yes, and they talked to the replay folks in New York, and they got the thing turned around, reversed, and of course I'm sure McVay wasn't pleased to hear that, but I think it was right. And when you heard it on tape, you could hear Dak say, "We defer." He just kind of didn't say it at first, and then Walt had already kind of, I think, cut him off like, well, you didn't say it right. Walt never heard him say defer, and I think Walt, I think they did the right thing. Pereira, first thing he said was, well, it's not reviewable. But then I think when they finally kind of talked it through, why wouldn't it be reviewable? Why in the world wouldn't you be able to go to the
well,
it's
especially
crazy.
when it's the official who made the mistake. Like, he didn't hear what the player said first. He only heard the second half of his comment. But let's be honest. It should have been cleaner than that. The Cowboys should have just said, we're going to defer. That's what everybody else does. The rest of it was needless jargon that created confusion that didn't need to exist in the first place. So, but they had a responsibility in my mind to get it right. And ultimately, out with a conversation between Walt Anderson, a longtime referee in the NFL, and Al Riveron in New York, they did sort it out. But it was interesting that both teams went to the locker room at halftime unsure of who was getting the ball first in the second half, because I saw Walt Anderson go over and talk to both head coaches, and I waited to see what McVay's reaction was. If he argued, I assumed it meant he was not going to get the ball in the way that he anticipated. And he did a little bit, but you could tell the length of explanation. He wasn't just telling McVay, yep, you're getting the ball. So it went the Cowboys' way like most of the day did, ultimately.
It certainly ended up being kind of a footnote, but at the time it was kind of a hilarious moment, and it seemed like it was more Cowboys just absolute debauchery, whatever you want to use, just what would you say, just embarrassing.
I'll just say it's going to get more attention than it deserves, despite not being ultimately much of a factor in the game.
That and the Black Cat. Two things that have gotten a lot of attention this season. All right, it is time. Frito, play the Doomsday music. All right, and it is time for the Doomsday Podcast, a winning edition. Cowboys win this thing 44-21. And Ed, it's so funny that about a month ago or a month and a half ago, there was a moment when the two of us were talking about the Cowboys had changed their identity. This was now a passing team, even though they were built. They paid all this money to Zeke. And then in one afternoon, it seemed to, I don't know if they've recaptured it moving forward. You don't want to read too much into one game, but for one day, they recaptured this former identity, the whole reason this team was built the way it was. And like Dak said to us the other day when we were out there on Thursday, the defense complemented the offense. Time of possession,
Yep.
Cowboys had it 36-06, I believe, and then the Rams 23-54. It really worked how they sort of tried to build this thing a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think that they dominated a game that really should have meant more to the Rams than it did to the Cowboys. And, the winning formula was a simple and familiar one. They were simply more physical on both sides of the ball. Ezekiel Elliott, listen to this stat. Ezekiel Elliott and rookie Tony Pollard powered through attempted tackles. The Cowboys gained 160 yards rushing after contact, their most in any game in the past 10 years. And after the game, Elliott said, how many yards did we have? Like 300? Close to it. We ran the ball really well today, he said. And the answer to Elliott's question is they had 263 yards. That was Dallas's rushing total. It was 241 more than the Rams had. They gained 22 against a Dallas defense that was just as dominant as the Dallas offense was. And, in the locker room after the game, you were hearing from guys like Sean Lee talking about how they really felt like their identity was at risk, that they hadn't been playing the way they played for the previous 5 years. They weren't winning with hitting. And he said the challenge that we made to each other is, hey, let's win the hitting contest, let's win the hustle part, and let's play right. And that's really what they did against a Rams team that, remember, ended their season a year ago in Los Angeles with a playoff record 273 yards rushing. The Cowboys were the ones with nearly 273 yards rushing, just 10 yards short of that today. 263 yards rushing. And I thought the other impressive part, being at the game, was their ability to overcome really bad field position early in the game. They had two 90-plus yard touchdown drives, including a 97-yard touchdown drive that was 14 plays long and included 11 runs, and a gamble on fourth down by Jason Garrett, not settling for the field goal. So I thought it was by far their best offensive performance in a very long time and their best example of playing complementary football since they beat the Eagles.
Yeah, I have to agree, and you're right. When they started, it looked like Hecker was all excited. I mean, that was really the Rams' best offense is when you let that guy throw it out there, the punter. But he pinned him down there on the 3-yard line, and then the Cowboys just raced it right down the field. You know, to your point, Ed, one thing that stood out to me in the running game, earlier in the game on a 3rd and 3, I think they tried to, or 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, they tried to pass, and it did not work out, and they had to punt. And they came right back, and it might have been that next possession. They had a 3rd and 3, and it was just a straight power. I mean, I don't know if it was even an RPO type thing. I mean, I think he just kind of flat out, handed the ball to Zeke, and he ran for 4 or 5 yards, and I just thought it sent a message. Like, this is available to us. We can actually run on 3rd and short, and you had some good stats on just the overall rushing yards. We were just looking at this. The Cowboys had 16 first downs by run. The Rams ended up with 3. Now we've seen in some of these losses, Ed, that it looked the opposite way for the Cowboys, and so for that one day they kind of found, and they also, this is a team that has had trouble embracing the complimentary back. They've really not known how to use it. You know, they had Tavon Austin. They're like, we want to get him the ball and let him run the ball. That never really seems to work that well. Although, boy, they threw him an open touchdown. He was open by 16.8 yards, by the way. That was the most, according to
any receiver catching a touchdown pass all year.
Most separation, in yards. Yeah. And obviously it helped that the defensive backs ran into each other. And the Cowboys took full advantage of that. But Pollard he just has a different style. He certainly appears to be a little faster. That doesn't mean he's not someone, he doesn't avoid tackles, but he brings a little more speed. And I just, or maybe it's quickness. I don't know if it's more overall speed. I just know that the two seem to really feed off each other. And when you banged on them and leaned on them with Zeke for a long, long time, and it was like Pollard, they had no chance of tackling him. He was bouncing off tackles, using his speed to get away. And for one, the Rams looked like the Cowboys did the previous 2 weeks. They couldn't tackle.
Yep. Well, if you remember the playoff loss in Los Angeles, the Rams had 2 running backs go for over 100 yards against the Cowboys. And now the Cowboys, for the second time this season, have both Elliott and Pollard go over 100 yards in the same game. They did it against Miami in week 3, and they were equally effective. And Pollard was, even though he does bring the speed and acceleration and the change of direction more so than Elliott does, it's interesting that each of them gained exactly 71 yards after first contact, and that no Cowboy player reached that total at any point in any game the previous season. And the Cowboys are the first team in 10 years to have multiple runners have at least 70 yards after contact in the game. So they did a really good job up front of dominating what I think most people believe is, a potential 3 consecutive Defensive Player of the Year, and Aaron Donald, who after the game was talking about how they got worked and how it was embarrassing and all of the things that so often we've heard the Cowboys have to say after an opponent had their way with them. This was a game where the Cowboys really exerted their power, and it was interesting to me that when you reflect on Jason Garrett during the week getting the team prepared for this game, he's always been a guy who emphasizes the right now, win the moment, win the practice, win the Wednesday, win the Thursday, whatever. And he doesn't ever want to look back, and he doesn't ever want to compare one thing to another. And he's the guy who comes up with a motivational ploy of, hey, let's get out last year's game film and let's show these guys some of their best plays from last year. Let's show them what they're capable of being when they play the way we want them to play. And then they accompany that by going sort of back in time as far as the game plan they put together going into this game in terms of being a run-first, physical defensive team. I mean, Dak Prescott threw 49 passes each of the last 2 weeks. He threw 23 passes in the game tonight.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. Some of those games where he ends up attempting 40 or 45 attempts, that isn't always a recipe for success. Although early in the season they won some games that way, 15 of 23 for 212 and 2 touchdowns with all those rushing yards. It really did sort of remind you of when they were at their best in past seasons. And to your point, Ed, that video, that highlight reel he showed the other day, Ross Hudson and I went over to say hi to Michael Gallup and visit with him for a little bit the other day at Thursday before the game, and Michael Gallup kind of laughed and he said, "I did not make that highlight reel." And
we know the play that Dak Prescott, where he runs on a third down against Seattle in the playoff game and throws himself to the goal line, that was one of the plays. I know that Jalen Smith racing across the field and knocking Deshaun Watson out of bounds before he could score against the Texans was another one. But this was, I thought the other interesting part of this game was the impact of two, really highly respected veteran players. Jason Witten's, one-handed touchdown catch for the first score of the game, and his emphatic spike, something we've never seen him do in 16 years. I think really delivered a message. And then Sean Lee. I mean, here's a guy who last year against the Rams, because of the presence of Leighton Vander Esch in his rookie season, Sean Lee in that game against the Rams in the playoffs played 21 snaps. Well, now that Vander Esch is hurt, Lee's moved into his spot. He didn't practice all week because he has a thigh injury and a pectoral muscle injury. The Cowboys worked him out before the game, even though they said they were pretty confident he was going to play. They worked him out with the idea of, hey, let's not put him at risk because Philadelphia is a bigger game for us next week. Let's not put him out there if he's not going to be able to make it through, and it puts him in jeopardy for playing the following week. But Lee was really determined to play. He praised Britt Brown and Jim Maurer for getting him ready, and the game he had was unsurpassed, I think, in his 10-year career. It's the first game he's ever had as a Cowboys player, NFL player, in which he had an interception and a sack in the same game. So he had some really huge impact plays. Two veteran players in Jason Witten and Sean Lee making a huge contribution to arguably the Cowboys' biggest win of the season.
I think it was, and that was a really nice interception where he dropped back there and he kind of came off his man and made a great play on the ball and on the return, and that set up, that pretty much put any chance of the Rams, even if they were going to get the ball to start the second half. 28-7 was a commanding lead, and then the sack was another big moment for him. It was good to see because that's a guy that's kind of been put out to pasture a little bit for the Cowboys, and he's been able to come back. And, Vander Esch was excited as anybody over there. We don't know if we're going to see Vander Esch the rest of the season. Who knows? But it is nice to see that Sean Lee can still play like that.
Yeah, the plan with Vander Esch is he won't play in Philadelphia. They're going to, re-examine him with an MRI after the Philadelphia game and determine whether he can play in the Washington game or in the playoffs should they win the division next week or the week after. So no determination made on whether he comes back at all this year. But I just thought it was so compelling to watch what Lee was able to do because as we've seen throughout the course of his career, I mean, I know he missed an entire season with an injury, and yet he went to meetings every day and took notes and prepared mentally like he was going to play in the game, even though he wasn't going to play in any of the games. And he's taken a very vested interest in helping to develop Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch to his own detriment as a player in terms of the playing time he's going to get. Mm-hmm. But he's gotten increased playing time each of the last 4 weeks in Vander Esch's absence, and then to cap it off the way he did today. And he's a guy who, came back, took a pay cut, and told the coaches that he was just willing to do whatever it took, whatever it meant in terms of his role, which position he played, how many snaps he got, whatever it was going to help him assist the team in winning. He was willing to do, and sort of Jason Witten kind of the same way in unretiring after, a year away from the game and coming back and agreeing to be, a lesser focal point in terms of the leadership structure on offense. And then he makes a huge play in the same game too. I think it was a good message, and it was good for those guys' value to be seen by the younger players.
I think that was excellent and well said, Ed. Before we're going to hear from Jerry Jones in a minute. Ed brought back some great audio, especially Jerry was able to talk, and boy, it just seemed like Jerry was a man that was so relieved. I do want to say our title sponsor, our newest title sponsor, Hudson Financial Group, full-service independent insurance and consultant group, has been building relationships for the past 31 years. And Ed, for a guy like you, you're still, you're a young man, but estate planning, that's important. You got to do that. You got to get everything ready in that regard. You have complex financial plans. They can put those together.
I'm turning my entire fortune over to little Henry.
Yeah, I know you are, but they could kind of help.
Simple.
They can help set that up for your grandson, and soon another one on the way. And just what's great about it, the friendships, the relationship aspect is a huge thing of this. A lot of people get in the door with property casualty insurance, they do their insurance with Randy Hudson, and then they continue to build on that. And over the years, they help out in a numerous ways, including as you grow that wealth, like Ed has over the years. They handle all that, and they do a great job of that. Let me give you the website. It's hfgventures.net. That's hfgventures.net. You can also go over on the, find them on Facebook, HFG Ventures, and then / Hudson Financial Group. We appreciate Randy Hudson and Hudson Financial Group for everything they do and playing such a large role in what we do at the Doomsday Podcast. All right, it is time to listen to what Jerry Jones had to say in the immediate aftermath of this stunning 44-21 victory over the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, of course, that's just what the doctor ordered, to get you out of the whatever you're in. And I must say, I guess I'm going to have to get me a new corn flip collar out there. But, no, seriously, really proud because that does renew the team's confidence in its work. And we have all the respect in the world for the Rams. You know we do. Almost this time last year, they taught us a lesson in the running game, and we know they're well coached and a good team. So this one was richly deserved and came along at a good time for us.
Do you wonder where this team has been all year?
Well, I don't want to go there. I just know that I'm buoyed by the fact that they're going to get this shot of inspiration, shot of confidence in what their hard work can do when it pays off. I think that everybody has soul-searched, as you should be, and you saw a lot of pride out there tonight, and I think hopefully we'll see that as we go forward into our really second season here, hopefully.
Does it cause you to sort of reassess what the future trajectory of your team and coaching staff might be?
I don't know that that implies that I had concluded and had assessed the future, and that's not correct. And so I had not reached that point, and wouldn't under any circumstances until this season is over. What it does remind me is the season's not over, and that's a plus thing. We've got a long road to hoe, but we've got a huge challenge coming up here this weekend up in Philadelphia, and but this is what the doctor ordered to get ready to go play the Eagles.
Jerry, is this
Besides
the type
their
of win
level of confidence, what about your level of confidence that maybe they can soul search for another 3 or 8 weeks?
Well, I'm not so sure that my confidence level is as meaningful here, really, at this juncture. What's meaningful is for these guys to go out and see some rewards from doing the kinds of things that you'd expect, good practice habits, good health, good players. You'd expect them to have a better go of it than we did against a couple of those teams the last 2 or 3 weeks. This did that today because, again, all the respect in the world with the Rams.
Jerry, how impressed with you win that you believe can turn things around for this franchise?
Well, I think this is home. I think this is a team that played in the Super Bowl last year, the Rams I'm talking about. This is a team that I know have really outstanding players, and I know them to be well coached. And so a win like this has that credibility as far as there's no adage. Once you see a player do it, you know they can do it. Once you see a team do it, you know they can do it. And it went right for us. It wasn't like it started off right. And it seemed like the first 3 or 4 significant things that happened out there tonight was going to be really not nightmarish, but not go our way. And of course, they played through that. But this is a great way for us to not get over, but for us to put in perspective what the last 3 or 4 weeks have meant, and how to pull out and make something good happen. It is possible for this team to be a part of a team that they can remember all their lives in a positive way.
Jerry, how impressed were you today?
Jerry, with the run game and Zeke and Tony Pollard, this is really what you envisioned for this offense starting team with a dominant running game. And certainly Zeke did his part, but Tony Pollard showed you the confidence you thought he was going to do.
Yeah, well, physical. I think I know firsthand from knowing what their goals were for practice this week, especially in the fronts, but really the offensive line. Their theme this week was physical, be physical, and boy, they were physical. And they played up against a really fine defensive line, and so I think that did set the tone. And then we had a couple of great plays by great leaders. Witten's one-handed catch, and then Shorshan's interception. All of those kinds of things, I think, were inspirational, and I think will be as we get ready to play Philadelphia. The thing about it is this really is for us a day-at-a-time season now. It's certainly a week-at-a-time season. The entire season can be really made into something very successful if we can go up there and beat Philadelphia.
Jerry, what gives you the confidence that this is who your team is and not what it was the last 3 weeks?
Well, we've seen how we played on balance for several weeks, and when I see a team that can take it on the chin the way this team has, and then turn around and have a game like today against a team like the Rams. That shows me that it's there. I've seen it, and I've seen these guys individually, and I've seen them as a team really handle adversity. And we all know they've been handling it in the form of sports adversity, NFL adversity, Super Bowl goal adversity, and I thought they responded well out there, and their backs against the wall.
You made a joke about that coin flip. Do you know what happened on that?
Well, I'm not for sure how it ended up with us the ball, but there was a period of time where in the first, right at the start of the first half, as well as into the first half, that I didn't think we were going to get the ball. And I knew there was some confusion. I didn't know I could be in lip reading as much as I am, but we were trying to get a good going over. But the real thing is we had no idea how the league would rule or how those officials were doing. But Walt Coleman is a long-time great official. And that's not because he hasn't made a lot of calls against the Cowboys, but so they worked through that, and I think came up with an answer that should satisfy everybody. It wasn't logical that that's the way you would do it.
You're talking about a dream finish, even when you had no reason to dream. You were playing bad. Does this put some substance into that dream finish that you've been talking about?
Yeah, and I don't want to do that here, but you know that I have that as a common thesis. I stand here with you as someone who's had a dream and lived a dream.
All right, there he was, and I think the real telling part of that, Ed, was Jerry saying that the Chicago game. I mean, he just was really down. He was completely let down by what had happened there, and they weren't playing up to his expectations at all. And then he had a game like today that exceeded his expectations. And so I think in that moment, Jerry, I didn't sense that he jumped back and said, "Oh, we're going to go to the Super Bowl" kind of thing. But I do think he felt a little bit vindicated on trying to stand by this coaching staff and stand by this team through all this mess, because for at least one day they did put a dominant performance on film.
Well, I know there were people who thought that, 3 weeks ago after they lost to the Patriots, that Jerry Jones should have made a change in his coaching staff and fired Jason Garrett and promoted somebody from within at that time. But Jerry obviously, just didn't feel like it was anybody on the staff who was going to give them a more legitimate chance to reach their goals that they established internally before the season began. And we know how high those were. And I think this was also a vindication in Jerry's mind of, I evaluated this roster correctly. This is a really good team. And to his defense, this to me is not a team that should play this way 3 or 4 times a year. This is a team that should play this way 10 or 12 times a year. Like, they have, in my opinion, that kind of talent. And one thing to point out here, and this I think has value going forward, is that these 3 losses came against 3 of the top 4 scoring defenses in the NFL. The Cowboys were completely overmatched in those games. And I actually came up with a pretty amazing stat about how futile their offense was in those games, in the 3-game losing streak. They scored 6, 7, and 7 points against the Patriots, Bills, and Bears through 3 quarters of those games. Through 3 quarters. You take that total, they had more than that at halftime today. So they're not going to play those kind of defensive teams the rest of the way. The Rams are the best of the defensive teams in terms of rankings that they're going to play in these next few weeks. They're undefeated in the division. They know the teams in their division. They know the teams in their division are not very good. This is where the Cowboys have dominated. They've dominated their division. Their second best game of the year, and their best game before today, was the game against Philadelphia, which they won in the first 15 plays when the Eagles turned the ball over twice. The Cowboys scored touchdowns off both of them. So I think that they should go win the division now. And if they do anything in the playoffs, it's going to create a really interesting decision for Jerry to make on Jason Garrett, who we've all fired long ago.
That's right. He's already been fired. I don't see him turning this thing around, but I think a thing that, and we'll talk about this in a second after we get the grades from Stretch, but I think that they were so horrific against the Patriots in those elements. I mean, again, that was a close game, but they were so ill-prepared for – I think that's one thing we're going to have to keep our eye on. And I don't know if you've taken an early look on what it is in Philly next Sunday.
I think it's supposed to be like 45 degrees with no precipitation now.
Oh, really?
It's a long time between now and the game. It can change, but that's a pretty good Philadelphia day in late December.
Not bad in December to get that. We just know that this team was seemed like ill-prepared for that. All right, we're going to put a bow on this one, Ed, but before we do that, let's get the grades from Glenn Stretch Smith. It is time for Stretch Marks. A lot of positive things being said tonight. And Stretch, I think you feel like maybe this team's headed somewhere. And I don't know, I don't want to overreact to this thing, but I do want to get your take. And let's start on the offensive side of the ball. This was the plays you showed tonight on TV. Some of the running plays that you liked. You liked Zeke, what they were able to do. I liked a play that came off the backside, actually, when they had those, like a couple of tight ends blocking, and it might have been Pollard. I think one of those long runs for Pollard, they blocked that up beautifully, and had some nice things going there. What's your overall feel? I mean, were you kind of shocked to see them as dominant as they were after as pitifully as they played for about 3 or 4 weeks?
Well, I think when you look back and you look at you got to self-scout yourself. I mean, the Cowboys had not run the ball outside very much at all. I mean, everything was inside zone, draws, inside zone, and I think they kind of sat back as a staff and almost said, you know what, we got to figure out a way to get our weapons on the perimeter. And what I showed, tonight on Hansen, and I think what I'm going to, when I start thinking about grading the coaches, grading schematically what happened, you have to give credit to those guys because they used the personnel really the way I thought they should have used the personnel all year, which is they got two really good tight ends. I mean, Jarwin is he's obviously a heck of a pass catcher, but he's becoming a better point of attack blocker. Well, we know what Jason Witten is, the crafty guy, the move guy, the guy that you can boot and get the ball to. But what I liked was how they used the running backs. They used the Walier some. They used Zeke up as a fullback some. They brought Austin in motion, brought him into the backfield, and ran an option with him. Obviously what they did with Pollard, pitching the ball to him. But thinking about how they used their personnel is really as good as I've seen them use it on that side of the ball all year. And that's including, when they beat Philadelphia bad. And so I think there's some things that you can really point to, that you can see the production and see what this team should have been coming out of training camp, which is a identity run-first team leaning on this running game, and that's exactly what they did tonight, and they went out and just beat the brakes off of the Rams. And I think that's something that, I've been openly critical about things, but when you got to give credit when guys go out and do a great job like they did tonight.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead for you and give the running backs an A+. I mean, that was a brilliant performance by both of them. I thought they did a nice job. Quarterback came out shaky. He was like, 2 for his first 6 or something. He was missing some throws, throwing the ball behind people. One to Cooper, one that Witten should have caught but was behind him. But then he got it together, finishes 15-20 for 23 for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. How would you grade the quarterback?
I think he managed the football game, and that's what happens when you're running the football like that, Matt. He managed the football game. They were able to run some of those boots and waggles and get out of it and let him get on the perimeter. Now, you got to keep in mind, I mean, his throwing hand, his index finger is bothering him. I don't know. Initially, he had a Band-Aid. He pulled that off. I mean, you've got to be able, when you're a quarterback, you got to be able to pull the seam on that football with your index finger, and I think that hurt him a little bit. But I thought he gave you a winning performance. I thought what he did tonight was manage the game, and for that, I'm going to give him a B.
Okay, B for the quarterback. We're giving an A+ to the running backs. The O-line. And Suafilo has stepped in there, thought he did a nice job. You've been somewhat critical of Travis Frederick, and you feel like he had it was impacted by being out all last year with that condition that he had. Are you starting to see him finally turn the corner a little bit?
Yeah, I do think that we got a great game out of Zach Martin. I mean, you got a great game out of Collins. I think Smith played, like Tyron does. I think Travis Frederick is the guy, for me, that the arrow all of a sudden is kind of ticking up with him. It would have been hard to have been critical of him coming off of, the injury and the issues that he had with that immune disorder. But I thought Suafilo came in and gave you a real workmanlike effort. Now, he got beat some, and, Donald can make you look bad, and he did at times. But I point to the right guard and the right side of the line, which was really dominant tonight, and they really did a great job of schematically. Again, I'm going to point back to the coaching staff, leaning on the guys that you should be leaning on. And I thought the offensive line had Suafilo not been beat, I would have given them an A, but I'm going to give that group a B+.
Okay, B+ for the offensive line. Wide receivers and tight ends, we were looking at this. Cooper and Gallup and Cobb actually only combined for like 3 catches. So not much from the wide receivers. Tight ends played well, and of course, Witten had that really, really nice one-handed touchdown catch.
Yeah, the Rams really played coverage. They felt like they could stop the run with their front 6 or 7 and played coverage. They were not going to get deep. I mean, other than the one deep ball that they threw to Austin when you got the natural rub and the 2 defenders ran into one another. Other than that, I mean, they really did a nice job with their secondary. Now, when guys do that, and we've talked about this before, when guys start playing coverage, you must run the football and get them to bring that safety down out of there. And that's exactly what the Cowboys did. They took what the defense gave them and just hammered running the football. And, hey, if they brought an extra guy in the box and the Cowboys would substitute, bring 2 tight ends. I saw them down on the goal line. Bring Fleming in, give a 3 tight end look, multiple personnel groups. But, you know, I'm going to point to what the receivers did on the perimeter blocking. I mean, yeah, you can go catch the ball, and that's what receivers do. But when you get your receivers to block, that means you got guys still believing in the offense. I'm giving that entire group a B+.
Okay, B+ for the wide receivers and the tight ends. Let's go over to the other side of the ball. Let's start with the linebackers. Sean Lee, a throwback performance. The interception was big because it set up that 28-7 lead, and then of course the sack was big as well. I thought he played extremely well. I thought Jalen played a lot better. What did you make of the? How would you grade the linebackers? And by the way, March had to come in.
Yeah, and I think they did a nice job of getting to their places in coverage. I mean, it was a great job by Lee because he had a stick route come right at him, yet he sat right back in his zone and was able to intercept that dig or that wrap that came behind that stick route. Great job by him. Great read and recognition. I thought the linebackers chased well. You know, the Rams run a lot of screens, run a lot of misdirection stuff, where the Cowboys, and I had dinged them in weeks previous, running poor angles, not taking good angles to the football. They took good angles tonight. And I thought, you know, there were times when Smith a little bit got out of position. That's the only thing that kept him from getting an A. But I'm giving that entire group a B. I thought they played really well.
All right, B for the linebackers. What about that secondary? You've been pretty tough on them. Thought Awuzie was in position a couple times, and I thought Lewis made some great plays on the ball. What did you make of the secondary?
Well, I thought Awuzie really did a decent job tonight. I mean, he played a wheel route one time really well, turned his head, looked for the ball. Like you were saying, Jordan Lewis played well. He had the sack. He played a nice nickel guy tonight. And when I say nickel, you know, he's covering those shallow crosses, that underneath stuff. And he did a great job of getting his hands on a few footballs. You know, Byron Jones, kind of gave you a workman effort. He got beat on the touchdown, but guys, that can happen. I mean, anytime you got the running back on the strong safety, it's hard to ding those guys there. So last week with that group, you know, you thought I needed a little medicine because it made some things itch. Hey, this week they did a heck of a job, and I'm giving that group a B+ and maybe the best grade they've had all year.
Wow, B+ for the secondary. You got some cream there that kind of healed some of the things that you were suffering from after that performance last week. As we look at the defensive line, and Lawrence was a guy that was very outspoken this week. Dropped some profanity and said that they had to find a way in this game. They seemed to pressure. They seemed to at least get in the face of Goff a lot, and he was uncomfortable through much of the evening.
Great job of running their stunts. This is the most clean job I've seen of them running a TE stunt. That's where the tackle goes first, and he takes the guard, and then he picks the offensive tackle so that the defensive end can climb back underneath. They did it really well tonight. Almost it was one of those things where you want to take those and make a highlight reel and come back to how clean it was with what they were doing. A really, really good job by the Cowboys front, not only rushing the passer, stopping the run. I mean, I'm giving that group an A. Great job right up front.
Boy, you have gone soft. I don't know what's happened. I will say.
Well, let me tell you something. Where I'm not going to go soft is what happened on the coin toss. Now, I'm going to recommend right now, when you get out there and you fumble around for your words, Mosley, I want you to exchange numbers with Dak, and maybe y'all can play words with friends where you type back and forth, whatever that Scrabble, words with friends, and maybe he won't mix his words up, crying out loud. That was unbelievable. I mean, I haven't screamed at the TV in a long time, and I called you up and cussed you out over it.
I was on the wrong end of that one. You're right, and they need to clean that up. And Dak owned up to it, and even DeMarcus Lawrence tried to take some credit for that or take some blame for what happened out there. They got to clean up the coin toss. I mean, my daughter.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say defer instead of, well, let's just let him kick it. Yeah. All right, let's defer.
All right, Stretch. Appreciate it. I know you had to get one negative in, so you would give the coin toss. You would give the coin toss unit an F. Was that about right? Just
another butt scratcher, Mosley. Just another time when you got to scratch your butt, and then when the newly signed kicker comes out there and just thumps it out of bounds and gives it to him on the 40, hey, at that point you want to say, what in the wide world of sports is happening here?
Yeah. Oh, I tell you, I'm glad you put that last part in. Our Philly audience loves it when some of your descriptions. So, Stretch. It's a big time. It's a big game next weekend. Okay, I want you to have your game face on. The Doomsdayers will be ready. Ed Werder is going to be at Lincoln Financial Field. I may go. I don't know. I'm kind of. I'll be a last minute decision on that. Great work, Stretch. We appreciate it. Okay. Godspeed.
It'd be good. Mostly pack your snorkel up and get over there in the Schuylkill River and rubbage around in that junky place.
Love the Schuylkill. Love the Schuylkill River. Yeah. And the Allegheny. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Be good.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith with his stretch marks. All right, there he is. Glenn Stretch Smith, as only he can. The fire, the venom that comes from him. But he didn't have a lot. You know, he's been so tough on this secondary, Ed. I mean, you have to admit the secondary, I mean, they played pretty good. They did a pretty good job. The Rams, put up some yards over the day, but for the most part, they didn't have too many, busted coverage. I think the thing that you got to continue to watch with this team, they have trouble covering the tight end. I mean, this is that's a.
Well, they better cover the tight end next week because that's all the Eagles have in the passing game at this point. That and the running backs. They don't have any receivers. Alshon Jeffrey's out for the year. He's on IR. Deshaun Jackson hasn't played since very early in the season. He's not coming back. So they're really playing shorthanded in Philadelphia.
Big time.
And you're right about the point you made about how well the secondary and the defense in general played against Jared Goff in this game. He's an interesting guy to watch because he's very slow. Like his tempo doesn't change regardless of whether he's got the rush coming at him or he's got time in the pocket. It's all the same. He doesn't seem to have the ability to speed things up. And I thought the Cowboys really created some problems with him under pressure. In fact, I'm looking at the numbers right now. He went 1 for 8 for 9 yards with an interception when under pressure in the game on Sunday. And even worse, he was 2 for 12 with an interception, throwing 10 or more yards down the field. That's his second worst game ever under Sean McVay. The only one that was worse than that was an 0 for 5 game earlier this year against the 49ers, who for most of the year have ranked number 1 in the NFL in defense. So the Cowboys distinguished themselves quite well with how they performed against the Rams in the passing game today, as well as totally shutting down Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they need to clean up, and this defensive play caller / semi-defense coordinator in Chris Richard, I thought he'd lost a lot of credibility recently. When we were talking to him the other day, I thought he was really pretty defiant. We tackle all the time. We always practice tackling. He did not like being kind of called out on that, but I think that was an obvious question to be asking him about. The tackling had been porous and it had been pitiful for a couple of weeks, so he needed to be asked about that. I think he maybe regained a little bit of his dignity in the way they played, in the way they tackled. The one thing they got to clean up, Ed, at some point, this Michael Bennett may need to learn how to line up on the right side of the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's a problem. Well, you can't be doing that.
Beyond the coin flip, which we know they have to clean up, they also had the new kicker, Kai Forbath, kick 2 balls out of bounds, allowing the opponent to start on the 40-yard line, which was another thing that Brett Maher did in his worst moments in Chicago. They also, on the very first two series, extended Rams drives with third down defensive penalties, and so that kind of thing is what gets you beat ultimately against a good team. And they're fortunate that while the Rams have played better and they've shown some resolve in responding to the low point of their season, which was a 39-point loss on Monday Night Football against the Ravens, they then won their next two games handily, including beating Seattle. We'd not seen that kind of resolve from the Cowboys until today. They had always followed up their most embarrassing moment with a more embarrassing game the next week. So it'll be interesting to see if the Cowboys can build on this or if this is a sort of lightning in the bottle, one-game aberration kind of a thing. I know Jerry seemed optimistic that this would provide them a shot of confidence, a shot of inspiration, as he called it, but we'll see. But they certainly have the advantage if you look at it in terms of personnel, healthy personnel going into the game against the Eagles.
I think you're right, and we will, of course, be there to react to it. Ed, I assume Ed will be right in the middle of it in Philly, although
I will be at the game. I'll be at the Cowboys a couple of days during the week covering them at the Star, their preparations for ESPN, and then I will be covering the team at the game. Sal Palantonio will be on the Eagles.
Wow.
And I will be covering the Cowboys.
Man,
that's that big a game.
That is huge, because usually Sal's ego is such that it's hard to kind of fit anybody else in there, but that's awesome. Werder and Sal Pal there, and there's been talk about me sneaking into town, but I don't want to.
Really?
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see how that all works out. But listen, Ed, good job, good work today for ESPN. Happy birthday to Christy, your number one daughter. And,
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. I saw that on Facebook. Always exciting to see that. Give her my best, please, and Jill as well. And we'll talk to you next week for Frito Nation Productions and Hudson Financial Group. This is the Doomsday Podcast saying good night, everybody.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it, between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.